What do you do, ladies and gentlemen? This is Triple DS. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Once again, we are here with Week 8's Pick'em on this channel. A lot of games that we didn't see coming. More specifically, I did not see it. Y'all did not see it. I think just like 3 people picked the Panthers to actually beat the Bucks. Over the course of last week, I went 9-5, as did you guys, my IG voters, bringing my totals to 67-40 and you guys to 62-45. I've still got the lead from about 5 games, so y'all got some catching up to do. We're only halfway through the season, so anything can change though. This week will be the week that I go perfect and I give myself $75. What? I do want to mention, as always, you are free to come vote on my Instagram, where if you go perfect on the voting, you are eligible to win between $75 to $100. Details are pinned on a post on my Instagram. Should you have more questions, feel free to DM me. So with that out of the way, let's go ahead and begin, ladies and gentlemen. We start things off on Thursday night, where the Baltimore Ravens travel to Tampa Bay to take on the struggling Buccaneers. As I mentioned earlier in this video, the Panthers, who are in full-on tank mode, who are on their 2nd head coach in the same year, who are on their 4th quarterback in the same year, beat the Buccaneers by 3 scores. There's definitely more than a cause for concern, at the very least from the offensive standpoint of the Bucks. Over the entire season, they seem like they can't get it done. And I know the Ravens have been struggling with Lamar, not being as productive as he was at the start of the season, but it's there. It's at some point, he's gonna go back to being the Lamar that we know. And even then, he's still not playing bad. The defense of the Bucks is still playing at a top tier level, but the offense cannot catch up. It's hard to win games when, despite the defense of the Bucks stopping teams to about 13 points, their offense can only produce like 6 or 7 points. Even though the Ravens aren't as dominant as they were earlier in the season, there's no way I can't take them in this one. So I have the Ravens winning this one on the road. They will jump up to 5-3. Meanwhile, the Tampa Bay Bucks will continue to struggle, dropping to 3-5. Up next is the London game, featuring 2 teams without winning records in the Denver Broncos and the Jacksonville Jaguars. All signs are pointing for Russell Wilson to make his return after missing a week of action in a game where the backup proved that he can play just as mediocre as Russell has been playing throughout this entire season. Similar to the Bucks, the Broncos just can't seem to get things going. And it's not like they don't have playmakers. They have Sutton. They have Jerry Jeudy. They do have Melvin Gordon. They have a defense that can hold their own against almost any other team. The Jacksonville Jaguars, on the other side, have been a team that started off great but has cooled down and then some. Borderline have frozen off through 7 weeks. They've also traded James Robinson, so now it's the first round running back from last year's time to shine. It's
Brucey's time to shine, baby.
The $75 million man, Christian Kirk, will probably struggle in this one because that unit of the Broncos is a force to be reckoned with. So this may be an ugly game that's going to London. And even though they have the same record, I do think the Jaguars are a bit of an underdog in this one, considering what the Broncos are supposed to be as a unit. I have the Jaguars taking this one, jumping up to 3-5, because the Russell Wilson-led Broncos will drop to 2-6 from a lack of offense. It will still be non-existent this week and most likely beyond. Let's move on to the 1 o'clock games. First up, the Carolina Panthers taking on the Atlanta Falcons. The Panthers surprised everyone, knocking off the Tampa Bay Bucks in a surprising dominant fashion. Will they be able to replicate this? Well, let's talk about the Falcons first. The Falcons did put up a decent, valiant effort against the Bengals, but the Bengals offense is now coming together, and that is a scary sight for any NFL team. And no, I'm not talking from a biased perspective at all. Having said that, the Falcons have proven that they are a more capable offense with Marcus Mariota than Tom Brady could, and whereas the Falcons' weakness is their defense, the Panthers' weakness is their offense. Outside of DJ Moore, I can't tell you of a big-time playmaker on that team anymore, at the very least from an offensive standpoint. Atlanta rises up to 4-4. The Panthers drop to 2-6. Up next is the Chicago Bears taking on the Dallas Cowboys. Both teams have come away with a dominant performance from last week. The Bears defeating the Patriots and the Cowboys destroying the Lions. I will say there are very few defenses that are capable of dominating the way the Cowboys defense has been dominating this year. Justin Fields was able to get it going, especially against Bill Belichick of all coaches. But I do believe that the train stops here, because with Prescott, I think the Cowboys are legit. I can't believe I'm saying this. I think they are I think they're legit Super Bowl contenders.
Wowie.
More than anything because of that defense. I will give the edge to the Dallas Cowboys because all around they are a much better team and they've been proving it for a long time. I'm aware that the Bears dominated Bill Belichick and the Patriots, but I need to see more consistency. If they can keep this going, maybe you got something there in Chicago. But for this one, the Cowboys jump up to 6-2. The Bears unfortunately drop to 3-5. Up next is the Miami Dolphins taking on the struggling 1-5 Detroit Lions. I will be the first one to admit that Tua does make a difference on this offense. I really didn't believe that he did, but Tua in this offense versus any other quarterback is actually a pretty big deal of a difference. With Tua in the lineup, they are firing on all cylinders and they travel to Detroit, where outside of the first 2-3 weeks of the season have looked absolutely lost on defense and on offense. Their injuries to St. Brown and Swift are definitely taking a toll on this offense. And well, the defense, well, we kind of expected that coming in this season, you know. Sorry, Detroit. Sorry. I won't stay really long on this one because I do think that there's a clear and cut better team outside of a possible trap game. There's no way I can't pick Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Mike Gesicki, and his gritties, Tua Tagovailoa, and the rest of the unit in Miami. I have the Dolphins winning this one on the road. They will take this one jumping up to 5-3. Meanwhile, the lowless Lions drop to 1-6. The Arizona Cardinals travel to the Minnesota Vikings homeland in Minneapolis, Minnesota.
Outstanding.
When we last saw them, they were still firing on all cylinders. Justin Jefferson was looking great. Dalvin Cook had come alive from a little bit of a slump at the beginning of the year. And the defense is looking as solid as most units in the league. Murray definitely looks much better with Hopkins in the lineup, but I think there's too much on this Vikings team to not win this one at home. The Vikings will take this one jumping up to 6-1. The Cardinals drop to 3-5. Up next, we have the Las Vegas Raiders taking on the New Orleans Saints. I don't know what to take away from the Raiders last game. They actually looked very, very good, but it was against the Texans. Both of these teams have a combined record of 4-9, so both teams desperately need this win to stay alive in any sort of hope to make the playoffs this year. All signs are pointing to Jameis Winston returning in this one.
Nope.
Now the question becomes, what about everyone else? Will Thomas take the field? Will Olave take the field? Will Landry take the field? I'm a believer that the Saints team is much better than their record indicates, and I don't think I can say the same for the Raiders. They have the talent, they have the structure, but they are losing games, and most of the games that they're losing badly. Meanwhile, I said this in a video yesterday, out of the Saints' 5 losses, 4 of them have been from 1 possession. So they had chances. They were in most of their games. And if their pieces come back on offense, their defense is more than capable of holding most teams down. Because I believe in the Saints more than the Raiders at this point, I have the Saints taking this one at home, jumping up to 3-5. The Raiders do drop to 2-6, and things are looking bleak for Josh McDaniels' first year in Las Vegas. We have an AFC East showdown between the New England Patriots and the New York Jets. If you would have asked me this before last week who would win, I would have had one answer. Now I'm a little conflicted. Breece Hall was the engine that had this offense running for the Jets. He has left with a torn ACL, unfortunately. So up next is Michael Carter, who is good, but he was nowhere near as dominant even last year to what Breece Hall was doing this year. Without that engine, you do rely more on other players, specifically Zach Wilson throwing the football. And I think young quarterbacks against Bill Belichick tend to struggle. Don't let last week fool you. I still don't know, even right now as of my recording, who's going to start for the Patriots, but I'm going to guess it's Mac Jones. Nonetheless, I think the X factor will come down to the ground game with Stevenson, who's been looking sharp through the first half of the season. I'm aware the Jets are 5-2, but I think that Breece Hall's injury is going to play a bigger factor, as well as their wideout being a distraction. Who complains when you're on a 4-game winning streak? But that's a story for another day. With everything considered and Bill Belichick doing particularly well against the AFC East, you know, ignoring the Bills, I do have to take the Patriots in an upset win on the road, taking down the Jets, bringing them down to 5-3. Meanwhile, the Patriots jump to 500 at 4-4. Up next is the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Philadelphia Eagles in a battle of Pennsylvania. This is another one where I'm not going to stay on there too much, because one team is clearly high and above a better team, and that makes me happy from a Who Dey perspective. Having said what I just said, I have seen enough Steelers games to know that the Steelers tend to, for whatever reason, when they are struggling and they are playing a much better team, they have this uncanny ability to come away with a win. So I'm aware that this has trap game spit all over it. Not written, if Kenny Pickett can limit his interceptions and if Najee Harris can get it going, this could be an interesting game. What's going against them is that the Eagles defense is just ruthless, especially that secondary, who's gonna give this rookie a very difficult time in this one, because these are the two things that the Steelers need to have a chance, and because the Eagles will neutralize pretty much any opportunity of that happening. There's no way I can't pick Philly in Lincoln Financial Field. I have the Eagles continuing their winning streak, jumping up to 7-0. Meanwhile, the Steelers dropped to 2-6 with an ugly showing from Kenny Pickett, man. We now move on to our first 4 o'clock game in the Tennessee Titans facing off against the Houston Texans. The Texans have been struggling for the past 3 years, and I don't think things will change much against their divisional rivals here. But as I always say, divisional games are a little bit different. I can definitely see a scenario where the Texans might come away with this one. I mean, they're 1-4-1 and they're non-losses have come from divisional opponents. Derrick Henry, I wouldn't say he's back to his MVP form, but he's looking much better as the season progresses, and I think that will continue. Meanwhile, the offense as a whole is starting to gel to go along with this defensive unit that is middle of the pack, but that's more than enough to contain Davis Mills and this Houston Texans offense, where outside of Pierce and Cooks, and even Cooks he's struggling this year, are gonna struggle in this one. I have the Titans winning this one at home. The Texans drop to 5-1, and the Titans surprisingly jump up to 5-2. I personally pegged them as a team that would struggle this year, but over the last couple weeks, they've actually, they've actually come together. Up next is Washington Commanders taking on the Indianapolis Colts. Despite all their controversy, despite everything that's going on, despite the callings for Dan Snyder to be removed, Ron Rivera to be fired, despite Carson Wentz being hurt, they're on a 2-game win streak. Can't say the same for the Colts, who have benched Matt Ryan in favor of the young quarterback Ellinger. I think that's his name, so I hope I'm not butchering it, with Nick Foles in the backup role while Ryan recovers from his injury. Their only weapon I feel like the Colts can use right now is Jonathan Taylor, but all other 31 teams know that, especially if you got a young QB in the lineup. The Colts are right now unpredictable on offense, and that's not a good thing because they haven't shown that they were the dominant team that they were last year. We were hoping for a Carson Wentz revenge game, but you know what? Heineke will do it for him. I have the road team Commanders winning this one, jumping up to 4-4, continuing their hot streak to 3 wins in a row, and making a run for, can I say a run for the NFC East? Meanwhile, the Colts drop below 500 to 3-4-1. Up next, we have the 49ers taking on the Rams in a NFC West showdown. Both of these teams were in the NFC Championship last year. The way that the trajectory is going is assuming that they are not going to repeat this again. They have a combined record of 6-7. Not the flashiest record for 2 teams that made it to the NFC Championship. You have the Rams, who are clearly struggling on offense, but they do get Van Jefferson back for the first time this year, and I do think that will play a factor in this offense flowing a little bit well, because with Van Jefferson, the Rams were actually pretty put together last year during their playoff run. But I need to see it to believe it, because the Rams have not shown any sort of dominance either on offense or on defense. Meanwhile, the Niners, at the very least, showed some dominance on defense this year, and their offense is getting better, especially with their upgrades at running back. I am going to take the road team on this one. The Niners will jump up to 4-4. The Rams do drop to 3-4 themselves. With that, the NFC West continues to not make any sense. Somehow the Seahawks, I think, are in the top of the division right now, and that's, hey, put that on your bingo card if you saw that coming. Speaking of the Seahawks, we now have the Giants taking on Seahawks in Seattle. The Giants are one of the most dominant teams right now in the NFL. That's something else I never thought I'd say this year. And the aforementioned Seahawks are in the lead for the division. The Giants are firing on all cylinders, and as much crap as I've given Daniel Jones over the past couple of years, I gotta give credit where credit is due. He is stepping up in a huge way, not just the big way, in a huge way. Huge. He is contributing to this winning streak that the Giants have had, along with Saquon, and he's doing it with a very no-name wide receiving core. Without their $70 million man, Kenny Galladay. I do really like the story that's being presented here. Geno Smith, Daniel Jones, and Saquon, all 3 are having a bit of a redemption. All 3 could be in the running for comeback player of the year. I'd like to see Geno Smith do it because he's been in the league way longer than the other two, and man, no one would have seen this coming. The Seahawks defense is not one of the better units out there, but Geno Smith has proven in every single game that it doesn't matter how bad the defense is, I'm going to keep this team with a shot of winning this one. And if I had to pick, man, I'm going to go with the upset in this one. I have Geno Smith and the 12th man at home taking this one, giving the Giants their second loss of the year. The Seahawks will jump up to 5-3 after an impressive showing here. I'm on the Geno train, ladies and gentlemen. Woo! We now move on to the Sunday night game where the Green Bay Packers take on the Buffalo Bills. This is the third game where I have to say I think that I can't spend too much time on this. Ladies and gentlemen, the Bills are my pick to win the Super Bowl this year. They are dominant on offense, even more dominant on defense, and they have a pretty good kicker and punter combo, so I think their special teams is pretty good too. Meanwhile, on the Packers side, Aaron Rodgers had an ugly loss against the Commanders, who their pass defense is atrocious. Not to mention that your wideouts are still getting hurt, and they weren't even that great to begin with. Things are looking bleak in Green Bay, and I don't think it'll get much better outside of a monumental historic game out of Aaron Rodgers, Aaron Jones, and A.J. Dillon. A lot of A's in that one. The Bills will come away with this one, ladies and gentlemen, barring unforeseen circumstances, as they jump up to 6-1. Meanwhile, the Packers do drop to 3-5. Finally, we have our Monday night game where the Bengals take on the Browns. The record may not show it, but the Browns are much better than their 2-5 indicates. I'm gonna stop saying Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. It's really just Nick Chubb at this point. The Browns are very dominant in the ground game, led by Nick Chubb, and their passing game isn't as bad as some people think. Maybe it's just the curse of the Cleveland Browns, but they just can't seem to get it done, hence their 2-5 record. Meanwhile, the Bengals are now slowly becoming the team we once saw last year. I was telling you guys, Joe Burrow just needed some time to adjust. He didn't have any training camp. He didn't play in the preseason. He had his, I think, appendix removed. So give it time. Lo and behold, he had the historic performance he had against the Falcons last week. There's no way I can't pick my Who Days, as I got the Bengals winning this one over the Browns. The Browns dropped to 2-6. Meanwhile, the Bengals jump up to 5-3 and continue their winning ways. So that is gonna do it, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you guys so much for watching. If this is your first time on the channel, feel free to drop a like, comment, subscribe, turn those notifications on. I do post almost every single day, and if you wanna vote to have a chance to win $75 to $100, just make sure you're following my Instagram. I leave a link at the bottom, and vote on every single game. Details are pinned on a post on my Instagram page, and if you have any further questions, feel free to DM me. Let's have a great week 8, and let's see how well y'all do. Let's see how well I do. Shaboy!